Thank you all for being here today. I'm Graham Knaus. I'm the Executive Director of CSAC, the California State Association of Counties. And we have a full room today. We have a jam-packed agenda today. And I really want to thank you for engaging and being with us today. We actually have probably the broadest group that we've ever had at one of our regional meetings. We've got, of course, county folks in the room. We have corporate partners in the room. We have nonprofits here. We have the school boards with us. We have some of our partners over at the CSAC Excess Insurance Authority that are here. We have state and federal folks here. And that's a reflection of how critically important resiliency is and preparing our communities for, in the face of a disaster, paving a better, stronger path in terms of how to work out of a recovery, learn from it, and really move to a future that better prepares our communities. And so that's about dialogue, that's about policy change, that's about learning from each other, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing here today. So really appreciate you engaging. It's great to be right here in Santa Barbara. I want to thank Supervisor Doss Williams for hosting us here today. He's in the back of the room. I also want to recognize the CSAC President, Leticia Perez, who's in the back of the room. She's in the house. And CSAC First Vice President, Virginia Bass from Humboldt County. So to kickstart us today, we have Supervisor James Gore from Sonoma County. He's on our executive committee. He chairs the CSAC Resiliency Advisory Committee. He also chairs NACO's Resilient Counties and has had a significant amount of experience in an unfortunate way related to disasters with the fires in Sonoma County that severely impacted that community. And he's been a great leader and is really engaged, has a ridiculous amount of energy that serves us all well as we navigate through this issue. So ladies and gentlemen, Supervisor James Gore.
You talk about energy. For all of us in this room, how can you not have energy when you encounter what I would call a calling? Something far beyond normal operations, policy, programs, initiatives, partnerships, something that is truly a calling. So first of all, I want to thank Leticia. Leticia agreed as the president to kind of spearhead, along with Graham and Matt Cate at the time, and Kara and others, is this Resilient Counties initiative. And the goal here is, number one, to acknowledge, right? Acknowledge that we are in the new normal, as Jerry Brown has put it when he was both in Northern California and in Southern California over this past year. Things are different, right? We have to acknowledge the fact that the same fire that burnt Sonoma County, Santa Rosa, Napa, Mendocino County, Lake County, and others, we had that experience in 1964. However, the ferocity, right? The energy of these extreme weather events changed things dramatically. 24 hours plus for that fire to reach Santa Rosa in 1964. 3 hours in 2017, right? 100-mile-an-hour winds on the peaks of gusts. 60-mile-an-hours down on the fire line. More housing built in the wild-urban interface than ever before. A full third of the population in Sonoma County, a full third of the population in California, a full third of the population in the United States now lives in the wild-urban interface. And yet, at the same time, we have the lowest degree of community preparedness and acknowledgement of risk for living in those areas, because that's another new normal, right? People are used to living with beautiful trees and other things, and please don't have that. I don't want defensible space because it's also this beautiful area surrounding my house. So we have to, number one, acknowledge. The second thing is we have the ability through CSAC, through partnerships with CAL FIRE, through connections through our COGS, our Council of Governments, ABAG, others, emergency manager associations, to do one thing, which is to identify the resources that are out there and connect the dots. This is not that complex as a very specific area. We need to get our stuff together, right? We need to make sure that, as in my case, 9 months before the fire, we don't update our hazard mitigation plan on the consent calendar. That needs to be our priority, not our secondary thought process. There is no higher calling than protecting the safety and security of your population. Dare I say, the resources are not too scarce, they are too diffuse. We need to connect the dots. Number 3, what we need to do is we need to grab the world by the shoulders and tell them, I'm not Chicken Little, the sky is not falling, but wake up. Wake up. Do not wait for this to come and smack you in the face to learn your lessons, right? Do not try and wait until you have a catastrophic event to be able to pre-sign up contracts with disaster management companies, to be able to vet how you would manage this, how you can trust partners and not, who's a charlatan when they parachute in afterwards looking for business in your community versus who can you actually go through an RFP process. How do you go through understanding what HUD, CDBG, DR funding is? How do you fight and legislate for FEMA cost share to go up over time? How do you go and have an ability to create 2 months after a catastrophic event, basically 50 applications and then write those into full proposals for the hazard mitigation grant program? How do you link that up with the forestry and the additional dollars that come in? Blah, blah, blah. The amount of energy it takes to understand this and the fact that everybody is learning this on the fly and not taking, for an example, from Jim Steele, right? In Lake County, as of last year, with the Pawnee fire still burning, our love to you, but even as of last year, 5 mega fires in 3 years. Not taking the lessons of Ron in San Diego County and saying, you guys have had 15 years of experience in this. How do we learn from a 15-year view, not a 3-year view? If I look at Jeff with Los Angeles, who looks at us in a meeting about 3 months ago and says, you guys are worried about alert and warning? Think about us. We got 88 cities and over 100 special districts. Try coordinating that. You know? This is just, it's our time to figure out what this is and prepare our communities. Because there is no higher calling. I tell you, there's no higher calling. Once you get into a disaster, you rise or you fall. There is no in between. If you do not deliver for your people, you are done, and rightfully so. But the other thing I want to remind you, as people who live in the communities that you serve, you got to remind also the press and the people around you when they ask you, what could you have done better? What could you have done? You have to look back at them and say, I don't think you realize I might be an elected official and a county supervisor, but I live here. My kids are here. So you have to not get lost in policy and programming and Wonkville. You have to think about what you would want in your own life. And you have to project that is what you need to build. So with that being said, we have a great example in a kickoff. Doss Williams, supervisor, former assemblyman. I really want to have you come on up and start to kick off our program, because yesterday what we heard was exactly what I was just talking about. We went and visited some of your constituents, toured your location, showed us all these different places, and what we had was people on the ground who said, this restored the purpose of democracy. That seems like a very profound statement. But when you get into a place where you can't look at people and say, that's not my jurisdiction anymore, that's the school board's jurisdiction, right? Oh, that's the other county, that's the city. They don't want to hear that. They just want to see that you're working your ass off. And if you're not working your tail off, they can see it, right? And they don't expect that you're perfect. If you remind them that the only way forward is imperfect, relentless progress, right? Imperfect, relentless progress that we can achieve. So thank you very much for hosting us and leading us on this.
Thank you, James. Let's give it up for James. His passion is really contagious for this subject matter. So we're here to talk a little bit about what can we do better. I think it's really important to have a focus on this, that if we don't learn something by our tragedies that we've been through, then those folks in the fires and those folks in the mud flow will have died for nothing. That's a pretty heavy statement. So that's a great burden on us to be able to look at all aspects of this and what we can do better. Since I got the soapbox for a second, I want to talk about something that doesn't normally get talked about as part of learning our lessons. And that is talking about root causes for the increased frequency of wildfire in this state. Now, it's not a scientifically demonstrable claim to say that that disasters are caused by climate change. I have enough scientific training to tell you that's probably not the right way to put it. But what we are seeing is an enormous amount of events that are enhanced by climate change. That the conditions that produce are increased in frequency and correlated, if not caused, maybe caused, by climate change. And I'll give you Exhibit A in our area is the increased frequency of sundowner winds, which is really the driver of catastrophic wildfires in this area, is wind patterns. The past, as the climate has changed, you see a correlation of increased sundowners in this community. And that means that, you could take that a couple different ways. You could take that going, wow, this is just such a big thing that we have to just accept that doom and gloom. Or you could take it another way. And that way is to say that we have an ability as a community to do something about it. We are the 5th largest economy in the world. We have a tremendous contribution, even as our little state, towards climate change. And the consumer needle can be pushed real hard. Now, Rondi over there and SCE has had over the past couple decades to shift heavily. Their energy mix is moving more and more renewable. And the state has made tremendous progress on that. But in the area of transportation, the progress has been very, very limited. And of course, that's the area where our constituents hold the key. Consumer demand. And we don't all have to be driving electric cars, though that helps. But a modest reduction of demand can really move the needle in this category. And I just think it's an important thing to bring into the mix. Not all the data is in for the most recent storms, but scientists make the claim that Typhoon Haiyan was 70% stronger because of current climate conditions. And a typhoon or a hurricane or a fire that's 70% stronger doesn't just have 70% more destructive capability. It usually has an exponentially higher destructive capability. Now, the real shift for me has been from the recognition that this is something that will hurt a lot of people in crowded, poor countries, right? Which I recognized because, when in the course of human history does millions of people have to move or live densely in the midst of natural disasters without the poor getting the biggest brunt of the damage. What I did not fully fathom was how much it could touch us even in our special, privileged, and affluent communities. This is something, if more people can suffer in a community like Montecito because of climate change, then more people can suffer everywhere. And I just think that's something that we need to walk away from and go, we got to do something about that. We've got to help. We're leaders. We have the ability to communicate with our constituents, and consumers can shift the needle.